Yo, 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 welcome to Crate 808, and today we're reviewing the return of one of the dopest hip-hop groups, hip-hop duos ever. And with me in the hot seats, joining me, podcaster extraordinaire Rohan from the Rap Plug podcast and writer and producer SonRaw, jumping on to talk Black Star. How are you doing, guys?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yep. Rap Music Plug podcast. I want to put that out there in case people want to check it out.
The Rap Music Plug podcast already picking me up. I hope you're going to be doing this for the rest of the show because
I'll be on you.
I love that. But this is a bit of 24 years it's been since they dropped anything. 24 years of rumors, 24 years of solo projects. But before we get in there, I need to ask you both what I ask everyone who jumps on the podcast. Rohan, I'll start with you first. What is the least hip-hop thing you've done in the last 24 hours, man?
The least hip-hop thing I did... I actually had a pretty hip-hop last 24 hours.
Okay.
Like I was going to say, I guess this is still, I feel, adjacent because basketball is so related to like hip-hop culture in so many ways. Mm-hmm. But I would say I watched just extreme amounts of highlights of like just like classic finals moments on NBA YouTube. It just went down I'm really into the finals this year, so I've just been getting like really extremely into it. So, but that's still decently related, but that's it.
Yeah, okay. I like it. Exactly. I like the nerding out. I love a rabbit hole. Love a good rabbit hole. SonRaw?
What did I do in the past 24 hours? I binged a whole lot of X-Men comics. I don't know if that's hip hop or not.
Again, like, the comics,
very hip hop.
We're in the
like
universe.
I feel Cannibal Ox would think that was cool. Other than that, I walked to the supermarket with my girlfriend to get some veggie sausages.
Boom.
That's not very hip hop.
Like not even real meat sausage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yo, quick reminder, if you're enjoying the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you'll be kept up to date with all that we're doing. And also, man, get involved in the YouTube comments. Man, we love hearing from you fellow hip-hop heads. We love nerding out. So bring those takes and just bring that flavour, man, and we might even shout you out on the show. So yes, appreciate all the support. Now, back to the episode. You went with
the cookout.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Okay, love that. Yeah, I think they work. I think they absolutely work. And I think people, here we go, seamless segue. Two rappers who definitely would eat vegan sausages. Yassine Bey, known as Mos Def back in the day, and Talib Kweli. This is how I do it, guys. Let's talk about vegetarian sausages. And before we do that, though, right, Black Star, 24 years. I just want to ask you both how you were feeling when, I think it was a bit of a surprise drop. So how you were feeling when it dropped, and were you excited? Were you hyped? Were you ready for it? Where were you at, both of you?
I'll take that first and say that I was pretty skeptical. It was a surprise. I know we had heard maybe for the last 2-3 years now that there was this Madlib produced Black Star album, but honestly, it always sounded not like a meme, but it just sounded ridiculous. It's like one of those like fake albums that are always supposedly in the works, but they never materialize because the players are just so high profile. But I'd say I was skeptical mainly because of Talib. I know he's been doing some, I don't know all the details of it, but he's been doing some weirdo behavior on Twitter and like there's all these things going around that have kind of sullied his reputation, I think, in a lot of circles, just of people being kind of annoyed with him. And I love Yassine. I really have nothing from that negative aspect, but we haven't heard from him much. Heard him some features, but I wasn't sure if his head is really into making music. So I guess my takeaway was I was skeptical of how this would really sound.
Interesting. How about you, SonRaw?
Yeah, that's not a million miles away. Like first of all, I wasn't sure that it would genuinely exist. And I thought that if it did exist, like I'd read all of these, not necessarily interviews, but all of these things that Talib said. He's like, oh, I had to ambush Mos Def in the back of a Dave Chappelle show with an engineer and a mic. And I was like, that can't be good.
Yeah. What?
And then when I heard it, I was like, well, it confirmed every bad thing that I thought about it. And I was like, it's still really good, but like it surprised me because I'm like, this should have been worse. And then kind of the more I listened to it, it's like, but it also should have been better. I felt really of two minds about it, in that it was like it avoided being like unlistenable, like a terrible thing. It's definitely not that, but at the same time, I'd always start the album and I'm like, oh, this is great, and I like it, and towards the end of it, I'm like, I don't like it as much as when I started it, and that seems to be kind of where I've been stuck in terms of my appreciation of it, where it's like I definitely like it, but considering the talent involved, like I think it could have been better.
Raymond Ridge, I need to talk to you about your testicles, and in particular, the hair on your testicles, because yes, support for Crate 808 is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Yes, have a listen to that.
Have a listen. This shaver really does run at the speed of light.
There we go. For the exhibit heads out there you go. It does run at the speed of light. It is. If you look on the camera, it's even got a little light for you there, mate. It's razor smooth. It's razor smooth, I would say. And this is what I'm talking to you about today. Ray, where do you stand on ball grooming, my friend?
It makes me nervous. It makes me nervous a little bit.
It does.
I didn't know I needed it until I had it. And that really is the sound of electric relaxation.
Stop. Well, I actually was going to say to you, is it hip hop to have clean balls? And Manscaped are great for this. They even send you like stuff to put on top after you've like shaved the balls, almost like aftershave for the balls, or so you have scented scrotums. Scented scrotums is the best title for a Cool Keith song that hasn't been released yet. Just like a hip hop backpacker uniform, you've got Timberlands, right? You've got Carhartt jackets, you've got fisherman hats, but now I do think we need to put clean shaven balls into the mix. Where are you with that?
No, I agree completely. In my opinion, you got to look after the twins so you can live that glamour life.
That's good. Manscaped's performance package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. We've got an exclusive offer just for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code CRATE808 at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, Ray, that's about 8 million balls. So get 20% off, free shipping, code CRATE808 at manscaped.com, and get involved, man. Get involved.
I heard it's used by Easy Dick and the Jack Off Hour.
Easy Dick and the Jack Off. Keep bringing them. So this is like, I think this is called the Lawnmower 4, Ray, isn't it? So pretty cool. Yeah. I'm enjoying this. But you know what I'm enjoying just as much? And maybe it's me, but my nasal hair and my ear hair can get a bit out of control. And I do tend to get in there and, just trim it up a little bit. And this weed whacker, they also do. This is also quite cool. And I really enjoy this. So yes, you get this. And, as I've said before, it's a gift for any hip hop head who's got hair on his body. So make all your holes look sexier. That's what I say, Ray.
Definitely. And what I'd say as well, if you've got the skills to eat someone's ass like cannabis has, I'd recommend it to you. You could use it on other people as well. You really could.
So yes, people, go out there, manscaped.com, crate808 code, get your 20% off and big yourselves up. Ray, I'm glad you've got clean balls, and I'm glad you've got the knowledge now to get those clean balls, because hip hop's fifth pillar is knowledge. So thank you, Manscaped, for letting us know that we do all need to go out there and have clean balls.
Thanks to Manscaped. It really does look like OPP.
Yeah. Absolutely. I sometimes feel like I'm in the film Prestige listening to this. Like the Nolan, I'm from one angle, one point of view, I'm like, fuck man, that is such a good song. Like there's moments where I'm like, and moments, there were moments on this album that are just so good. And I'm like, that moment is so great. I wish I could stretch it and elongate it. Then I'm from the other POV where I'm like, this just doesn't work. Like this doesn't even make sense at one point. I'm like, this doesn't, I want it to make, you're almost wanting it to make sense. And I felt like I was just coming from two different, I'm glad that you were there with me, SonRaw, as well. I just want to give it a context, but I'll come back to you, Rohan. I was going to say, I was actually kind of mildly surprised every time I drop anything on my socials, on Facebook especially. Black Star are so, like, there is such a big following for Black Star, more than they've dropped one album. Like, that's what makes me think it's almost like Nas dropping Illmatic and then going off to do group projects and never dropping a solo project again. But it's the reverse. And you're like, these guys have dropped music now, and but there's such a fervor. And it kind of rubbed off on me when we started seeing the tweets. I know it's been like 2 years. I think it's just 2 years old. Some people say about this album, been sitting on the shelf for 2 years pretty much. And I think that surprised me, that how much people want this to work and want a return. But with that said, Rohan, what did you think to the album generally then? Like, we've heard what SonRaw saying. What are you saying to it then?
I think you're both touching on some of the main points that especially that I think what Talib said in an interview or some kind of like piece related to the record was that, yeah, it was like made in guerrilla style. It was recorded in a guerrilla style, recorded in dressing rooms and hotels. And that's the unfortunate takeaway, which is like, it feels like it. And specifically the way it was worded, it sounded like, yeah, like Talib was the one ambushing Yasin, not the other way around. And I feel like we can hear that too, because what was pretty surprising to me is that, like, generally speaking, I'm a much bigger Yasin Bey fan. I've loved, like many people, obviously Black on Both Sides, but the Ecstatic is maybe even my favorite, but I can debate that. I'm not even sure myself. Talib has some great work himself, Quality particularly, and then Reflection Eternal with High Tech. But I've always been more of a Yasin Bey fan, and just consistently, even in his sparse moments on like features, I've always loved it, not just liked it. But I was surprised that he sounds like he's on autopilot on some of these verses. And that was my biggest disappointment, because Talib actually, I wouldn't say was in elite form, but he was definitely more locked in. And there was more moments rapping where I was like, oh, I liked that Talib Kweli verse. Whereas like Yasin, I'm like, that was all right. Some of the singing I liked. I think even just that little part on Sweetheart, Sweetheart, Sweet Odd. Like, I really loved the singing. I like the singing on the intro too. But for the most part, that was my main takeaway, was that Yasin was kind of underwhelming. And then the other part was that it started off a lot stronger than it ended. I think particularly the last song, last two are pretty good, but the middle part was pretty weak. I think it starts and ends pretty good, but the middle part has like my least favorite production moments and my least favorite rapping and singing from the both of them too.
Oh, interesting. Yo. Us here at the Crate 808 podcast have kicked off our Patreon. So if you don't know what Patreon is, it's a platform where you can go and for a small donation, you can help support us make more hip hop content for you. Go on to patreon.com/Crate808 and you can check out all the little payment options you've got there. You can check out the 2 new episodes you'll be getting every month, live chats with us guys, just to rap nerd out with you guys. We're going to go into some wide-ranging episodes, delving into the work of the Wu-Tang Clan, MF Doom, and Jay Dilla. So get it locked if you want that new granular look at hip-hop. So go to our payment tiers on Patreon. Big up yourselves. If you choose to support us, thank you so much. I will give you a personalised shout-out on the show, and we shall catch you in one of these live rooms, and let's get this community going. So spread the word. Much love for your time, and peace out. Boom. I think about why they made this album. Obviously, there is massive, like, it's like the Chronic, and Detox. This is kind of myth around it almost. But it's almost like they have literally just made this for Black Star fans. And obviously reflected in the fact that they just put it on Luminary. And I just think they don't really care about anyone else. They only care about that ardent, group of fans that I've talked about a minute ago, and it's catering for them and not caring about the critics at all, really, because maybe it's the era of fan service we're in at the moment, where you get all the Star Wars content, you're getting all the Marvel content, and it is kind of exactly that. But the thing that gets me, and the thing that kind of confuses me, is that it's more that than trying to make an artistic statement, but it does have moments of definite artistic statement, if you know what I mean, tendencies. And I just think it's so hard to kind of tussle with that when you think, are you trying to make a piece of art, or are you really just doing this for the fans? And then they put it on Luminary. And what do you guys think to that? Like, as a platform, putting it on a podcast platform, where are you guys at with that? Do you have any takes on that?
I mean, I think, speaking to what you're saying about like doing it for their fans and how they have this passionate fan base, if you like, I was just beginning to be a hip hop fan around the time the first Black Star album came out. I probably actually missed the release date, but it was definitely like something that was getting played at the time. And I think that for a certain generation, the fact that they were like the anti-Puffy, the anti-Rough Riders, the anti-Bad Boy, and like they were the whole in opposition to the Jiggy era, which is hilarious because they jacked as many beats as Puffy did on that first album. They jacked Slick Rick, they jacked BDP. It was like, I was like, wow, for guys that are really complaining about this, you sure do it a lot. But that's the kind of, I almost feel it's like that thing where people that fall in love with punk as teenagers, it becomes like this core part of their identity, like the values in the music beyond the music itself. So I think that's maybe why they have a particular fan base. And I mean, even talking about like Talib going weirdo on the internet, I feel that like for a certain generation of like, we're the woke, left-wing artists, but now like the younger people are, questioning maybe some of the values. Like every generation gets reappraised in time. For some people, they're like, no, Mos Def and Kweli, they represent us. They're the true, true lights of hip hop. So I feel that they must have a lot of fans like that. As for the podcast thing, I pirated it. Like I didn't,
Yes.
I was there and I was like, okay, you can do that. I'm just, I'm not signing up for a podcast for another podcast.
We've all been brought up on LimeWire, so I'm sure they know.
Especially their generation of fans of all.
They're like right in the Napster vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Rohan? What do you think to that? All their fans or their expectations, how they've come out with it?
I think the way SonRaw said that is very, very eloquent, because in a lot of ways, they're not the only artists that have kind of been, in a way, reappraised by the younger generation who are looking at those quote unquote conscious rappers, like they called them back in the, like at least fans called them back in the day, and looking at maybe what they stood for, what they do now. And you kind of see there's a disconnect between what the quote unquote, again, quote unquote, I don't like the term, but conscious rappers are doing nowadays. And you see there is a gap, and it's just natural. But to that point, I do think those fans are less bothered by the things that I would be potentially bothered by when it comes to like what they're doing in their spare time, or kind of maybe the values that are instilled in their music or what they stand for now. But as it stands for the artistic part of this conversation, you were saying, the part that also boggles my mind is that, and was probably other than Yassine's performance, was just that like they're hinting at this like spiritual time traveling, like Afrofuturism theme. And I find it's kind of like painted onto the album versus actually like embodied in the verses. At times it is, and at times it's mainly Talib. And again, goes back to like, he seems like he was paying more attention, like really locked in a bit more. But this like no fear of time thing is mainly just delivered through the interludes. I think the conclusion, like that final outro, that was really powerful. I actually really liked that. And that was one of the only moments where I was like, this feels like it's building, it's built to something, but it kind of like didn't build it and just kind of presented at the end. I was like, oh, this is actually really beautiful, but I don't really feel like it was carried out in a meaningful way. It was just like an assembly of songs for the most part that have like definitely had like content that was trying to say something. I just don't think it was that much depth to it.
I think there's a weird, like you said, disconnect between them. This is an artistic statement. We're doing it backstage. We're doing it off the cuff. We're doing it, we're wholehearted artists, as in like, we don't need to sit down and write anything or like, there's a lot of recycling on this album, as we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure. And I feel like they've got this and they're thinking this is it's very Andy Warhol. I'm in my, in my warehouse. I'm just doing this kind of really quick turnaround art. But the problem is people have waited 24 years for it. And you yourself have like really passionately argued why this album has taken its time. I don't know if you saw Yassine talking to Talib, and he was like, if you really want a Black Star album, go out and make one. Oh no, sorry, you can't because you're not Black Star. He was so angry about it. And just as they've been about the whole Luminary thing, put it behind a paywall, they very much believe people don't value art, but they put money into trainers and stuff like that, which some people would call art, I suppose. But I mean, I think it's something like he said, I'm supposed to get half a penny for this labor or something. So they have all this build up and they know how much people want it. And yet on the other end, they've kind of tried a esoteric like take on Afrofuturism, which I love. And there's moments like you've said, which is exactly that. And you think, if you'd taken even another 2 years to just maybe nail it from the cover's incredible. I was so hyped seeing the artwork, and then you're absolutely right, Rohan. It doesn't feel like it's connected enough, or maybe the execution just isn't there. But as a personal point of view, this is a grower of an album. I like it more now than I did. And there are moments that I really, really like. That moment there you said is, I love that. So at least I've got that. And I think it was Cinema Sai who said, what did he say again? Like, it is Pitchfork review, Dylan Green. Anyway, I've got it written here. For all the hype, fans deserve something better than just good enough. And that's kind of harsh. But I don't know what you guys think of that. I think it's kind of right though.
I think for me, I mean, I'm going to bring some personal experience in this, in that I'm trying, like, I'm at the last legs of finishing up my first full rap album with an MC, and I did it, no funding, did it myself. It's coming out, I can't tease too much, but we've got to mix it. We need to get some scratches in on a song, and we've got to master it, and we've got to just make sure that we're cool with it. And, it was recorded in the sense it was during COVID. So I sent beats, he sent it back. We didn't have an overarching vision. It was definitely less haphazard than ambushing someone backstage. But what I realized is recording songs and making beats is fun. Anyone can do, it's not anyone can do that, but you can get a computer program and you can do it. And it's really fun. But that last 15, 20, 25% of mixing it right, of adding the skits or the song transitions so it works, of figuring out a track listing order, of getting cover artwork, of figuring out how you're going to present this so people respond to it, which, obviously Black Star didn't have that problem because they're Black Star. And like, as soon as they'd put something out, like, people would respond to it. But that stuff is the real work of being in the music industry. And I don't necessarily think that Mos Def especially, but also Talib, are used to that, like, completely independent grind. Like, they had labels behind them. Certainly Mos Def always had a label behind him. Talib has put out a lot more music, and I'm sure he's a little bit more familiar with it, to tell you the truth. But it's hard. And, like, I didn't see that side of it being executed well. I think if they'd sat down in the studio, like, if they booked out, you said 2 years, 2 weeks in the studio to just review what they had and touch it up and have let's say Bob Power engineer it, you'd be golden. It's not like it's not like what they had wasn't good, but it's the difference between having someone with fresh ears listen to it and say, you could do this better. We need to work on this. This doesn't quite work. Are you sure you want to do that? That's something, it's done because people always say, like, oh, Dr. Dre made me rewrite my verse 3 times. You don't need Dr. Dre to do that. You just need to listen to someone as if they're also Dr. Dre, but Dr. Dre's the only one who can pull that off because he's got that giant house that we saw in that Ice-T documentary.
Yeah. Intimidating. That house was intimidating.
360 views.
Yeah. And thank you. That's a very interesting point I'd not really thought about, the actual craft behind it. Again, you've waited so long, maybe, but then is it there? I don't know, like you said, the lack of maybe even, but then I can't think they would have reviewed it, surely, when they're sitting there. They would have reviewed it. But
I think sorry to cut you off. I think the point that is really interesting that SonRaw is bringing up is that I think, again, especially Yassine, but Talib too, I don't think they're really used to this grind of, like, doing a lot of things on your own, being a lot more self-sufficient. And this is also something we saw with Nas and Nasir when he worked with Kanye. And what I mean by that is that obviously it's not like that was an independent record, but the thing that I think many people took away from that album was that, Nas did not feel comfortable and he didn't sound comfortable working in that environment where Kanye was doing the whole, like, he was in the ultimate, like, I'm in that Andy Warhol, like, I'm in that artistic, like, off the cuff, it's all like the natural intuition. And Kanye is so much more, like, designed as a human to work in that. And even then he didn't always bat 100, but when I listened to that album, I was like, yeah, I think Kanye did his part pretty well. I think Nas was the major reason that album was a disappointment. I really liked a lot of those beats. And I think Yassine based on his entire track record of being a guy, same with Nas, that takes his time, that doesn't just put out spur of the moment music. It sounds like he rewrites stuff. It sounds like he's very meticulous. I don't imagine the guerrilla style recording was a great fit for him naturally. You can still make it work, but again, you need to listen. You have to do those other things. Then you really have to get some external help and really at least take your time in the revision process, which I'm not commenting on that they did or didn't. It just doesn't sound like they did. And they're not playing. I think that a lot of this albums, they're like, I don't think many of the parties played to their strengths. I know we'll get to Madlib soon, but I think this didn't help Yasin like to create his best work. Yeah.
It's funny because sorry, I wanted to respond to this before because you mentioned that Talib sounded like he was trying harder on this album, and I totally agree. It was just weird because I was like, Mos Def I prefer Mos Def coasting to Talib really trying to, and to be fair, I'm not gonna be one of those, there's a lot of podcast hate on Talib Kweli. He does not, he's not beloved in this space. I will say, I really love that first Reflection Eternal album the Liberation joint he did with Madlib. So I'm not saying this to say the man doesn't have good rap music, because he definitely does. But this is a project where it's like he wanted it to happen so badly that it didn't really matter if it was as good as what people expected.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I thought Talib was brilliant on this. Just being like, I expected a lot less. I don't know. Maybe something after all the stuff that we've heard in outside of the context of the actual music,
right?
Something cringy, something that's going to refer to that. It was a little bit of fear, a little bit of apprehension, thinking, please don't say, something that's going to make me hate you, or like that just is going to grate. Kind of didn't, and kind of really leaned into what he's good at, which is very much making me. There are moments on this as well when he's talking about, just race and society and all that. That still moves me. There are moments that Talib moves me on this album, which maybe I didn't expect it to happen as much. I know he dropped something with Diamond D about 2 years ago, a year ago, something like that. And that didn't, that should work, but it didn't for me as much. One question I wanted to ask you then, because I've heard lots of different takes on this, on the recycling element of this album. There are recycled beats that we've heard. I'm sure we'll dip into that. There are recycled verses. There are recycled Madlib beats I've heard before. I know is it Mineral Mountains? Not. I kind of had it on my edition of it, and I know it's not part of the album generally, but that's a Madlib beat from back in the day. What do you guys think about that? Does it detract from the actual art for you? Does it detract from the listening? How does it sit with you?
Yeah, the one beat that I didn't actually write it down. I half did my notes. I'm sorry. The one beat that bugged me was the one they reused from West Side Gun, because I massively prefer that West Side Gun song.
Which one is that?
Ferragamo. How do you say it? Ferragamo Funeral, isn't it?
I know the song, but remind me which one on this.
Oh, my favorite band.
My favorite.
Okay,
band.
right,
yeah. That. Thank you. Between the two of us, we had both track titles. No, I mean, West Side Gun announced that Gunlib album like 2 years ago, and like, who knows if it's ever going to happen? But I would just massively prefer that to pretty much anything, because I'm a huge West Side Gun fan / stan / purchaser of t-shirts and whatever. So to hear anybody else get on it was not going to live up to my expectations. Apart from that, it doesn't totally bother me. I mean, I listen to a lot of dance hall, and people just jump on rhythms all the time, or like use classic bars all the time in grime music. And I can't say that I followed up, on the last 10 years of what Mos and Talib were spitting. So I can't say that I recognized everything that people were pointing out. It was only when it was that Madlib beat, because, supposedly Madlib has so many beats. Why would you reuse one? Or I think even the bonus track was also reused from something else.
Mineral Water. Beat tape somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, why would you use stuff that's already come out if he supposedly has, hundreds and thousands of beats?
But maybe they've chosen them. Maybe that is the thing I was thinking, which is it isn't like there aren't many like odd moments where, oh, that's a bit of a left-hand turn. It does very much feel that they're at least thinking of a piece, like keeping it all
right.
So all the beats kind of, I can imagine them sitting there going, "Nah, that one works better with this." But after over thousands, there may be many more that you know, Chris Crack's used some of these as well. I think, yeah. So I think there's I don't know. What do you think, Ben Rohan, about the whole like element of that? Does it detract at all for you, or?
It doesn't really too much. I'd say there's a difference between a recycled beat though and a recycled verse. I just think there's something different when I feel like when there is a verse that's been repeated on another song. It definitely does usually take away from it. It actually often does. The only times it really doesn't for me is when it's like another rendition or another version of a song by the same artist. Like an example is Kanye has a Homecoming on Graduation, but then he has Home, which is like the original version that went on Freshman Adjustment, that has a different verse. And actually it feels like different beat. And it just feels like an entirely different song. It's not made for a stadium. It's like so College Dropout-esque. And I like really love both versions. And because I just feel like he actually made two different things, even though the verses are basically the same, 99% mostly. But the beats, I don't really care as much. I just think it's about what you do with them. And a perfect example is, I think it's the Messiah music beat on Def C's, I think it's Snares, off of Trapdoor. That's easily one of my favorite songs of last year. And on that album, it's beautiful. It's so heartfelt. And then Makami had the same beat, and they all released within like a month too. So it was like many people noticed it. And I think Makami did a great thing, and it was completely different.
Yes.
Like they're not comparable. So it's like, I don't care. It's a great quality beat. It's Messiah music we're talking about here. So it's great. So I don't have a problem with that. It's really what you do with it that is a more of a factor for me.
Yeah. Just to go off on a massive tangent, if anybody wants a Matt Comey like episode, I need to do one. So Rohan, let's
call me.
Oh my god, yeah, sign me up.
Let's just do all of his albums. Sorry, you just had me thinking about. But yeah, you're right. And I don't know if they did. For me, did not stand out, and I think there's a deeper thing to it. Like other art, if there's other art that have taken influence, or you've redone your work somehow. Tarantino does his work over and over and over again. I feel. I know it's not blatantly ripping something like a beat, but he definitely has moments where I'm like, oh, that's just from Pulp Fiction, or that kind of thing. Okay, so let's have. Do you know what? I just want to pull that through.
I got one thing I just want to circle back, because I thought it was really interesting what happened there. You mentioned Matt Comey, and I went, oh my God. That's how people used to react to Mos Def. That is exactly how people used, because he sang, he rapped, he seemed like he was from another planet, but he was also steeped in New York. And the fact that, we're talking about that about another MC that just, for better or for worse, that just shows like where the magic is right now.
Yeah.
Even though I still like the album, and I'm happy that I'm happy it exists. I think the world is better with No Fear of Time existing and out for the people to enjoy than it would be without. And I can't say that about every rap comeback album.
100% with you. Absolutely. Tribe. I actually still listen to moments of that Tribe album. I love that Tribe album.
That one's one of the best rap comeback albums.
I think it is the best. I now
it probably is. Yeah, I don't have one on the top of my head.
Especially last 10 years. Last 10 years, no one's done
with Fife too. The whole Fife thing involved, like it was really had a lot of things where I was like, this is going to be a throwaway. I was like, he wasn't fully alive during the process, even though I understand it actually was. He had a lot of input in that. He named it too. Yeah, that's just I actually listened to that recently. I hadn't listened to it in like a long time. It's just phenomenal.
It's still good, right?
I think they pulled it off.
Still good.
I think it's really funny that Tribe basically retired with the Love Movement, and Black Star was like, this is the new Tribe Called Quest. And Tribe had their comeback before Black Star.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? That's so mad. Yeah. But then I think that's the thing. That's given me hope that, anyone can do it. Like if you really have it in you, you can do it. And it doesn't always, majority of the time it doesn't really land. But 444, everyone talks about that one. There's another one that kind of did land, and it was a great album. I would say Magic. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that surprised me. Nas, and I was waiting to not like that. I'm not a massive fan of King's Disease. I think they're good, that they're solid. I just don't revisit them really ever. Magic I revisit, so I don't know, something about that as well. But yeah, I'm always here 50-year-old, 60-year-old rappers to come back and do it. And I don't know if there's many other genres in music that you could be that old and still bring such good music out. Like definitely not in rock that I follow, definitely not in punk that I follow. So maybe electronic music, I can see some artists there, but generally I think hip hop's got that nailed for someone who's 50 to come in and, I don't know, it's a young culture, right? And they're doing stuff which is Afrofuturism with like socio-political ideas, but you're in space. And that I loved. And just want to pull that thread that you said, Rohan, earlier about that, which is the first thing my first experience of this album. This is actually, to be fair, you know, we've been talking about them fans on them comments. That's me, I've just realised, because I was in Portugal on a family holiday, not supposed to do any, I was supposed to be concentrating on, you know, my lad and my wife, and we're having time away for the podcast. And I hear it's dropping, and I somehow managed to get a file on my phone. I've never done this before, but managed to get the files on my phone, and it was like midnight, everyone's asleep, and I was just in this little room in Portugal listening to it, and I was so into it, and I was thinking, this is amazing. My first listen was, but maybe it's the sun, maybe it was I was on holiday, I don't know, but I genuinely felt, oh my God, you know, and to go to them lengths. But the thing that hit me first and foremost was the Afrofuturism aspects. I don't know where this genre has really gone in recent years. I don't know what you guys think about that, the Afrofuturism feel to this album, or like, is it something you like, enjoy it, or is there other genres, like films that are doing it? I don't know.
Well, I think I definitely enjoyed it. And like I said before, I think it could have been executed better in the sense of being more thoroughly invoked in the verses and just more present, versus just kind of feeling like it was painted on a bit for context most of the time. I would say I'm like super tapped into like really the history of it, so I don't really want to comment on that, but I will say that I have heard this more often recently, like in a lot of like underground hip hop especially. There seems to be, especially like artists like Moormother, like that's like probably the artist when I think of this. And also artists like August Fanon has made music, and I think it was props to Blood Money Perez. He mentioned this on Twitter. It was something about this album was being talked about in a conversation, and he said that he liked this aspect of the album, but he just felt like someone like August Fanon just does this so much better, and he's just made this so many times. I know that also because the other artist I was thinking of was this artist that Fanon's worked with many, many, many times. His name is Kinsey Babyface Perlis. He is someone that is just like on another planet. He's actually truly one of my favorite artists ever. Like, I just think if you haven't heard of him, he's not that known, I know, but he's truly makes like the best music I've heard in a long time. And it's all in the Haitian voodoo vibes. And it's also music that's incredibly experimental. So it's like, he is like a Haitian voodoo spirit in space, and he plays around with this. He's into like crypto, and like, not like that's really a part of the music directly, but he's really into just like new digital futures. It's crazy. So I think it's interesting. To that? I will.
Like, yeah, because that sounds like something. It sounds like something I'll either really like, or I'll get to the end of it and like, I respect this, but it's a lot.
Yeah. And August Fanon's beats, I have to say, the best work he's ever done is with this guy. And they have like 8 albums that they've made. I'm not even joking. It's a lot. It's not.
He's a brilliant producer.
He is incredible, prolific as hell, as well as Billy Woodson and Lucid will attest to. I was actually going to say, Rohan, please do follow these guys on Twitter, by the way, if you're on Twitter, because they're great follows. And I actually listened to his few albums because you tweeted about it a few weeks back. And I was like,
I routinely every couple months I just have to say, people need to listen to this guy. I'm telling you,
you are flying.
I'm in love with it.
But very hard to get into for me at the moment. But as SonRaw said, I sit there and think, no, I'm coming back to this at some point. I am coming back to this.
And I did interview him too. You want to check that out, because it provided, it was actually funny. I interviewed him before I got into some of his more rare music, because he's like Makami in the way, follows in that trend of pricing his music a certain way. So there's some albums that are quite expensive, others that are more affordable, but that was even before I got and really would say I love him like as much as I do. But he provided some pretty interesting context to his time as a vet and things like that. Yeah, in the war. Yeah.
Oh, wicked. Well, okay. What did you want to say, SonRaw? Was there something on that you wanted to say?
Yeah, on the Afrofuturism point, I guess for me that didn't smack me in the face that hard. I mean, obviously the album cover is a beautiful example of that, and I'm not remembering exactly what came first, but this was right around the time that Aethiopes came out, and I know that as a guest on a podcast, I'm obligated to say how great that album is. But I mean, I always come back to Woods' opening verse on 9X, which is like practically science fiction.
Yeah.
Just like a weird time. And I was like, that is so much more blatantly Afrofuturist to me than the content on No Fear of Time. So it didn't really hit me that much. But obviously, you know, I might be particularly picky about this. I literally named myself after SonRaw, the jazz musician who practically started that kind of stuff. And I love a lot of dub music, going into the early bits of dubstep on hyperdub, which was really steeped in that kind of iconography. And so in that sense, like, I might not be the best, the best person to be impressed by it. I'll be like, oh yes, I've seen this on the, but like, if it gets, a kid or even like someone in their 20s who hasn't really like come into contact with that kind of idea and that kind of aesthetic and culture, I mean, more power to them. It's, it's just one of those things where it's like, you end up listening to so much music when you're music obsessive that maybe the problem is you and you're the one who's a little bit jaded. And I think I think in my case, it might be that, just because, it's like, oh, I'm listening to this underground album that's, way lower. And even then, like, Rohan's bringing up an artist I haven't heard of. I'm like, oh, that's really exciting to me. So maybe, I think that, it's not necessarily them. It might be me in this case.
I feel you. Obviously, those young listeners will have to have a Luminary subscription to be listening to this. So any young Luminary listeners out there, go check out Black Star. It's already, free for you. So it's fine. But this is what I mean. This is I just hadn't expected that take from them. Very different from their first album in a way. Also, the first album has a lot more statements, I feel. I think in this, there isn't that same wavelength. Again, they're on different weight. That's the interesting tension, though, I feel. That's or like, not tension, but like Talib's like immediately coming at you, telling you, yes, 2020 energy. Yassine Bey is almost like floating ahead, like above him, and just kind of like assessing the spiritual side of almost everything, and which doesn't always make sense on some tracks. And I wanted it to make more sense. But let's go into some of those tracks though. And we need to talk about Madlib as well, generally, when we do this. Is there any tracks then that we have here that we talk about most rewindable moments or hidden gem moments that maybe you think that people haven't talked about yet, as this album's only been out like a few months? Anything from you guys? Rohan, have you got anything?
I'd say my most rewindable moment was the final track, but specifically Talib's verse. I think that was his best in terms of like the content. I think like he says, like he has some pretty thoughtful, poignant bars, and I think he had an urgency to it. I think he had an urgency, like a sense of like you said, he was coming with this energy, like this mattered, what he was saying, which he normally does, but I think it worked on this album.
That's No Fear of Time, isn't it? The track No Fear of Time?
Yeah, the final, the closing track, No Fear of Time. I really like that. I think he has the opening verse. And then I'd also say like, it's kind of like I'm kind of like adding two things here, but he also had one of my favorite pure like moments, like the hottest bar on what is the main thing is the main thing to make it the main thing. Whatever that title of the track is.
Keep it the main thing.
Though I love the way Talib starts his verse, because like Yassine is asking like, what is white supremacy? And then he says mental illness. And then he has that like really dope flow to start it off. I just loved how like jarring that was. Yeah. So that's like probably one of the few times I'm getting really perked up and like excited to like hear a part of the album. And then hidden gem, I'd say, is just the singing from Yassine at the end of Sweetheart. I just love that part. It's small, but it's fantastic.
But it's a moment. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
How about you, SonRaw?
I would agree with the main thing. That was like a clear standout to me. The beat is spooky. And like you're saying, like Talib just launches into it. That one was a favorite. I think Sweetheart. That one, to me, it gets the closest to that original Black Star vibe. It's very soulful. It's warm. So that one, like, it felt good to listen to. It's one that I might like replay or put in a playlist or something if ever it makes its way to something that a platform where I can playlist it on. I mean, I know that we're going to eventually get to Madlib, but I think he really handles a lot of heavy lifting on the album. I'm curious as to how he participated in it, because the sense that I get is that Talib had a beat tape or several beat tapes, and they just ended up choosing off of those. I don't get the impression that he was like really involved, to the point where I think like maybe if he had been, the mixing on the album might have been a bit better from an audio, not that I listen to hip hop necessarily for like crisp fidelity, especially underground hip hop, but I do think that goes into the just kind of like that care aspect where they could have, done a little bit more in terms of mixing it down. And I also, in terms of a hidden gem, like the hook on No Fear of Time, when the horns come in, it's just really, really just like you get chills. Like it might not be like on every song or the entire song, but they still has these moments on that album where like they get the magic going and it makes it all worth it. And I think that's a good example of it.
That No Fear of Time just made me think about cherishing Madlib more. This is a beat he's probably had sitting there for however long, and I love the horns on that. And they are my most rewindable moment is those horns on that as well. And although I love Bay, and especially with his like float on lyrics and stuff like that, I love that. I don't actually know if I can that's one of the ones that confuses me. I don't understand. Another one is Sweetheart. I can't decipher. I know what Talib's kind of getting to, but with Yazin's, it's harder to almost unlock it, which is kind of nice because I like a bit of a challenge. I love Car, so I like a bit of a challenge like that. I'm just not sure if the reward is there with Yazin on parts of this where I want to. Absolutely, let's try to sit down and really think, like let it soak in, but unlike someone like Billy Woods or, Lucid, those things, they hit me and they're so rewarding. On No Fear of Time, I think there was quite interesting when Talib came out with a lyric I loved where it was like, I think he's talking about just like being classed as a victimization and what it means to be classed as a victim in society. It's an interesting angle to look at like race and, I think he talks about something Olympics. I can't remember, Oppression Olympics.
Yeah, Oppression Olympics. Yeah. That's the same verse I was saying I really like.
Yeah. And I just want to pick up on that because I think it comes in with, we know better, we know metals, no rose petals. And that we know better, we know metals, not rose petals. And that really hit me where I was like, fuck man, that is that. And wow. He had that moment where I thought, Talib, yeah, fuck man, you are bringing it with that. But I don't know if Yazin has it as much. But yeah, Madlib then, let's talk about it. Like, I just want to kick off with you because I find this an interesting answer people usually give. What does Madlib bring to you, to your musical like palette that no one else does? Like, what do you go to him for? What does he bring that no one else does for you in hip hop? Big question.
I mean, yeah, it's a big question. It's you cannot, in my case, I cannot overstate how influential Madlib has been on me. Like even as a musician, like his approach to just taking or chopping a sample or even just looping it and not overdoing much. Once I found out that like I was like, you can do that, it just completely changed how I view things. I mean, him sampling SonRaw and Shadows of Tomorrow on Mad Villain, huge moment for me as well, obviously. At the same time, it's interesting to me because there's this while in the 2000s where he was just clear and above the best producer in hip hop to me, at least on an underground level, on a sample level. And nowadays, he's still really good, but he's not as prolific and he's maybe not at the center of the conversation as much. So I was really happy to hear him come through with these beats and for it to be like a good, solid rap project. I do wish that some, there hadn't been reused beats. We mentioned that earlier, but I mean, I can't, I cannot not Madlib. He's just really, really great at what he does and the mystery that he has around him. I just feel that there's so many artists today like that anyone who is pre-Marsburg, let's say, that was the role model. And like, we're talking about August Fanon. I don't think we have August Fanon quite the same way without Madlib. And unfortunately, because Dilla passed, we don't have him around. But like Dilla is the one that most people will refer to. It's like, oh yeah, it's like acolyte of Dilla. But Madlib, quite as kept, I think, has probably had even more of an impact on underground hip hop production. I was actually surprised that he handled it himself, and I'm surprised they did not have any Dilla beats on this one, though.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on Madlib, just before we move to you, Rohan, I was going to say on Madlib, I kind of see that. I kind of see the impact. I hear Messiah music, and although it is different, there are definite roots to Madlib's just daring, just kind of moments of, and I'm not sure on this album if there are daring moments, and maybe that's what they weren't going for. It's kind of playing it safe in the remit they've given themselves. There's not many left-hand turns, which Madlib is fucking great at. Beat Conductor in India, like that. People don't talk about that album. I don't know what you think, Rohan, with the Indian background.
I have it in my notes because it's relevant to something. It's my favorite shit.
I can't wait to hear that. I was going to say that when I first heard that, it made me feel so fucking proud as an Asian guy being like, fuck, look what hip hop that I love can do with the music that I've been brought up with. And on top of that, I remember going in my car playing it, and my father-in-law, some Gujarati guy, he loves Queen. That's what he loves. That's his English palette. And he was like, what is this? I was like, yeah, this is Madlib. And I got my father-in-law into Madlib, which is mad. So I just wanted to say that. He's incredible. Rohan, what did you have? I'm looking forward to hearing that.
So I'll start by saying like what I go for Madlib, like to your earlier question. I'd say we both kind of said it, like those daring, quirky, eccentric moments that are so raw and like just shouldn't work but do. And like there's like always a grittiness, there's always a weirdness. He birthed Lord Quaz. I think that's just like legend. He's already a GOAT just from that. That's like one of my favorite albums, and it just genuinely puts a smile on my face. It's just complete madness that he created that. It's just hilarious.
Yeah.
But like more specifically to the music, like technically speaking, like I just love how he mastered like this rough texture and made it just, it's such a defining trait of so much of his music. And as I bring it to No Fear of Time, I don't think, similar to like what I was saying with Yasin, I don't think this album played to his strengths, but I don't think it's really just because of the Black Star situation and how they created it. It's because I felt this way about Madlib's instrumental album last year. I think it was last year, Sound Ancestors, which I like. It's still very good music. Like I'm not trying to, like Madlib is a genius. Everything, his B level is still great. But this is just kind of like it doesn't play to his strengths of being able to have those moments of left field, daring, boldness, where it's just like crazy, quirky. It's often staying in the kind of like box of I'm making this music that like it is trying to fit in the theme. And I think it does. It has this kind of like ethereal feel. There's a lot less harsher, rougher moments. It's a lot more smooth. It's a lot more standard and like easy to rap over, a lot more spacey. And I don't think those are ever things that I've said Madlib's great at. I think these beats are pretty solid. There's some good ones, but the good ones don't fit that bill. Like Sweetheart is probably the best true Madlib beat here. The Main Thing beat is also the most rambunctious. I also love that. And then No Fear of Time is probably the only time I think he really hit it out of the park, making a beat that fit this theme.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like Yonder, Supreme Alchemy,
I love Supreme Alchemy's production. I don't know.
I'm not feeling it. It's not like it's bad, but it's just below his weight class. I think like there's not a lot of personality to some of these beats, and they just kind of serve as like solid, smooth backdrops for Talib and Yasin.
Fascinating.
I like when the beats are like a larger driver of the energy of the songs. Like So Be It, going to the Beat Conductor in India. I listen to that and I'm like, yes. Fuck yes, man. This is what he did. And Beat Conducting is my favorite Madlib instrumental album. But even when I listen to that, I'm like, I just want to put on Beat Conduct in India. And I did that. Like right after, I was like, I just want to listen to this. This is like similar to you, Cam. Like that's the feeling I felt. Is like, damn, he made my culture like hip hop, and he made it like not just decent, like it's truly incredible every beat after beat. It's so
fucking brilliant.
Yeah. I just think this cleaner sound, the spacey sound he's not the best at this. There's other producers that do this better.
Interesting how old these are. These songs could be really old and I'm not calling them offcuts at all. I think Supreme Alchemy's actually got really good production, but that's what I mean. I think there is that element of they've picked them. Who knows how old these beat tapes are? What's he working on right now? You hear what he does with Freddie, and it's like, that's different, man. That is different. And yeah, so on Supreme Alchemy, though, I just wanted to say that Talib on that as well was great. I think there's one moment. What did he say now? Again, I'm going to it now. Talib has moments, man, on this album where we defined by our memories. It's such a throwaway line to some people, but for me, right now, in my life, my daily basis, I'm tussling with this kind of idea of getting old, having a kid, and having a wife, going through fucking so much trauma over the COVID thing, all this shit. And then you have him saying we're defined by our memories. And I'm constantly talking to my wife saying, the one thing you have left when someone leaves is memories. And there's moments again where you think, yeah, like, I don't know if he didn't mean that, whatever, but you take art and you convert it to your life, right? And I think there's moments in that track that really get me. Another one.
And it fits with the theme too, like the no fear of time. And again, it's just like, I think there could have been more. Maybe it's not all on Talib, but there could have been more to flesh that out. Cause that's I didn't immediately catch that line or remember it until you brought it up. That is really like interesting. That's an interesting thought, because sometimes memories, they are great to have, but sometimes we just let that be all that we think about and all that drives us. And then the rest of our life is just empty. Like,
it's very Kurt Vonnegut. Like, it's very Kurt Vonnegut. It made me think of reading Kurt Vonnegut's idea of time, and then this album has the time thing, and I was thinking, I wonder if they're going to do Unstuck in Time. They're going to do something there. They didn't do it as much as we talked about, but I always think, like, even when they're saying stuff like I don't know, being as we are, kind of artistically inclined at times. You make music, SonRaw, we make podcasts as well. So it's like this kind of idea of, what does they say? You'll always be the winner if you decide what the metric is. And I thought, that is perfectly put for, in my position, who is in a crowded space, always trying to, and I've started like that. I always started thinking, no, I'm going to do this because I love the culture. I want to just do it. It doesn't matter about success. But as you get bigger and you are in it for a while, those demons do creep in, and you think, how do I get bigger? No, it doesn't matter. And this album did ground my feet again. And I need that sometimes. And it's like, yeah, that's so again, I don't know if it's just me reading too much, but those are the things that were hitting me after, and those ones, Supreme Alchemy, man, and the Doom reference, like about, I think he has a Dilla reference on there as well. So, I still can't believe Doom's gone. So to hear him say something like that, again, it's going to hit me anyway. And I think it says something about slowing down and accelerating, notions of time again. Maybe they're not blatantly all over the place, but they are little threads. Go on, yeah.
In terms of what we're talking about, like metrics and success, I'm not remembering who I said this to first, but I always said, like, being a rapper is the hardest thing for people to accept, because the idea of success for a rapper is just ridiculous amounts of money. So you can't be like, unless you are driving around in like, a luxury car, people are like, oh, you're a struggle rapper. And I just remember being a DJ. It's like, I could have played the shittiest bar and people were just impressed. Like, oh, you're a DJ. I was like, yeah, I play that bar. It's like, oh, wow, that's so cool. It's like the amount of pressure that you have to have, even if you like, at this point, I've pretty much stopped DJing, but I can like look back on my like quote unquote career and be like, hey, yeah, I did some pretty cool stuff and everyone accepts it. Whereas if I put in that same amount of effort to be a rapper, everyone would have been like, well, that guy was a failure. Like he did some shows. But it's so I mean, for them to be two veteran rappers who, especially if they're saying that streaming isn't paying them, like I feel that there might be a certain sense that like maybe they should have gotten more respect from the industry, which we can debate that, as much as we want. I mean, the content in the album, it does, it's at least it's a little more positive than that. There is that sense of reflection. I do agree with you. I wish, it always comes back to like, I kind of wish that Mos Def would have been a little bit more involved beyond spitting a verse or a hook or just doing that, like, especially with Madlib involved, because we know just how much Mos Def loved Yasimbe, I should say his name correctly, but we know how much he loved MF Doom. He'd go around just spitting entire Doom verses. So to maybe have that, more daring, wacky left field sense of things that Rohan brought up, that could have helped the project. But again, we'll never know.
But you know what? Saying that, the link there is there. So Be It is a Doom beat. That is a Doom beat. As soon as I hear So Be It, I was like, yeah, I can hear Doom on this. Doom would fucking kill. You have their moments, and that kind of, it's almost like a 50s style kind of chase thing to it. I don't know, it's weird. I can't really put my finger on it, but Yazin's on that and fucking rewarding all of my love for him. And that is that's from White Drapes. That's a verse, God, about 10 years ago, maybe even now. So I think that's a long time ago. He's reworking a workshop. Actually, you know what? People should go out and listen to Call Out Culture's version of, because they noticed that as well. And Curly Castro came up with something really interesting. A big up Kurt Castro, because he said that it sounds like Yazin is workshopping. He's workshopping his flows to then maybe use somewhere else. And I know he has said, this is an artistic statement, we're putting it so you can, they're very much behind it as a work of art. And to him to recycle a verse from 10 years ago, I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine. I couldn't remember the White Drapes verse until I thought, look back and dig a little bit. And I don't know what you thought about that, but Castro might have it on there. Like, it does feel like there are moments where he's workshopping it a little bit.
I think that's also, we're seeing the difference in where Yasin and Talib Kweli are, in the sense that I get the impression that Talib thinks this is his last best chance to make a big impression on the rap world. Whereas I think if Yasin Bey were to drop an album next year, people would immediately tune in and be interested. Which is not necessarily, you can say it's fair if it's not, but that's the vibe I get.
Even after December 99th, is it not December 99th? That was, yeah.
But even then it wasn't, I remember for the first 5 minutes after that dropped, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? A new Yasin Bey album. But then I heard about the background of it. And if I'm not just the fact that it was named differently and it sounded like it wasn't really supposed to be treated like a true Yasin Bey album, immediately I was like, okay. I listened to it and I don't remember anything about it. I remember not liking it, but I genuinely, that was like 6 years ago. Maybe it's aged great. I don't know, but I agree with that that statement exactly. Like, he can drop just say it's a Yasin Bey production, a Yasin Bey solo album that is new material, 30 minutes, people will go crazy on that immediately. Talib, not at all. And he's made more music too since Black Star. So it's pretty clearly not the case. And that's interesting. I feel like that might be I would love to know what that dynamic is between them, because I'm trying to think of Outkast. Although Big Boy, I think, gets disrespected generally from the public, and they think he's just such a level below Andre, and it's always stupid when people say that. But we do kind of know that people generally perceive Andre as this mythical creature, and Big Boy gets respect, but not as much. But still, Big Boy gets enough respect and has had a lot of success without Andre. Run the Jewels, a more newer thing. LP had a cult following before. Killer Mike, if anything, was the smaller artist. And now both of them, if they released a solo, I think both would get quite a big reception. I think there's a pretty significant imbalance between where their profiles are and their stock are in the game. And I wonder if that played in a part. I feel like it would have to be, especially because Talib was the one who was really pushing for this. It only makes sense that he kind of felt the urgency, and Yasin's yeah, we'll do this. And I think we hear it. Yeah.
Just on this Yasin tip then, we're talking about Yasin now. Just some favourite moments, if you guys have any of Yasin Bey, of Mos Def. It doesn't have to be a whole album, just moments. I always love the verse on Oh No. I always think that make you pour your pride on the rocks and make you swallow it all is still one of the best ways to put that. But I think there's one moment I wanted to bring up was the Woodsman. And it made, just listening to this album, I was like, oh fuck, yeah, I forgot. He was the cop in The Woodsman, which is the darkest film. And he was that. That's what he was doing. These independent features, really good acting. And I know that he changed his name, to counter that kind of Hollywoodization of him a little bit, which obviously he led into a little bit. But I wanted to just bring up The Woodsman and just say to people, if you haven't watched that, if you want to just see what he was capable of, on the screen, that is amazing. I don't know if you guys had any others that just kind of stood out to you as moments from Mos's career?
Just like generally, like music, like music,
generally
right?
music or stuff that that if someone was talking about Mos Def to you, what moments like you think, love that. Those those.
I mean, Umi Says is an easy one. That one just always that was like the one that because I'm much younger, so I only got into Mos Def at the time. Black on Both Sides. I think I only listened to it for the first time in like 2009. Right. Or something, 2010. Honestly, actually, I think it's much later. It was 2012, 2013, because I remember I was on a trip with friends to Cuba and I listened to that album exclusively, like when we were on our downtime of not drinking profusely.
Amazing. Right.
And that's like a great Cuba album.
Yeah, really
that matches like the vibe perfectly.
It does. Really and it was like it was like my grad trip type thing. So I was really all reminiscent and like in my feels of like, I'm aging. It's just like such a funny album to listen to in hindsight. Amazing. But I'd say Umi Says, and I'd say Priority off of The Ecstatic, produced by Preservation. That's probably my favorite isolated moment of just like perfection from him. I just love the beats insane. And I just love, that's like a great summation of like what he stands for. It's like cause even I love the way he talks about spirituality. Cause I'm not really religious, but I feel every word he says, even though I don't believe necessarily in like a prototypical God. But still it's just marvelous how he puts that. It's so frank and to the point and you can just tell he means it. It's passionate. I love it.
Love that. What about you, SonRaw? Anything?
I'm actually gonna echo a couple of Rohan's points, but The Ecstatic is great, and that's actually my favorite thing that Mos Def has been involved in. Not just because it's a really strong album on its own, but it dropped in 2009, which was not my favorite year for hip hop, and it kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't have much of a build up, and you just like appeared out of the blue and dropped like an incredible album. He did kind of the same thing that Erykah Badu had done the year before with New America Part 1.
Yeah.
So it's this mini wave of Soulquarian affiliated artists coming in at the end of the decade when, music was kind of in this in-between space and dropping these really strong, like I would say classic projects.
2010.
29, 2010, they were all really great. I mean, Umi Says is a great song. Actually, I don't know if you guys have heard this one, but there was a 07 remix of it that I used to drop a lot in the club. And it's a really, I mean, on one hand, it makes it a little more like dance floor palatable, but it's just a really strong remix from like kind of the peak of their career. So I like, I love that one. That's
love that.
a favorite. And one of just my favorite cameos that he did was in the Talladega Nights movie, where he's just a friend of Sacha Baron Cohen's.
Oh yeah,
F1, which to me was just hilarious, because if there was one rapper that an F1 driver would be friends with, like sipping his espresso, it would be, at the time, Mos Def, the sophisticated Ruckus Records, artists, to me that was. Like, I really like that movie because it takes the piss out of like the American side with NASCAR, and also I thought that it didn't pull its punches on either side. And that's what made me really like that movie. And that whole scene was just like, that's Mos Def. What the hell is he doing there?
That's amazing. That is amazing. Oh, so good. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. On those little moments though, like not cameos, but song, like, okay, Ecstatic gets all the love. Black on Both Sides is my top, the first album I ever bought on this podcast was Black on Both Sides, so you can see how highly I rate it. But I think, especially actually think about it, the main thing track, that beat is something that would work on, and I know no one's going to like this, but True Magic. And I love, I've talked about True Magic before, and I think other guests have told me they're not going to come down with me on this road, but I'll see if you two do. I think True Magic, and I remember hearing it at the time, falling in love with it. Clear like CD cover. There was no album artwork before Kanye did it 10 years earlier or whatever. And I remember just riding the DLR to work. Like, I used to work in live radio at that time, so I used to be up like 4 a.m. listening to True Magic all the way to the BBC to get some work done. And then I'd be coming home and I'd be like, fuck, this album is amazing. And that was before I started really going into the internet reviews of it and then seeing that everyone hated it. And I was like, how? Like, I think fake that beat could work very well on True Magic. I'm not sure if people like this album or not.
It could. Yeah. I actually think I need to listen to that album again though, because I remember listening to it very long time ago, and similarly, but that's the thing, I listened to it in the context of hearing that it wasn't very good. It's just poison the well. That's the thing about the internet sometimes, or a lot of times, that it's so easy to just get a stupid bias. Like that's happened to me way too many times. Like as I started to expand my scope when I was getting like as a young adult into like other forms of music, hip hop or not, and just getting introduced to music with the wrong bias, either it's way amazing and I'm like, this isn't that great. And then I revisit it 5 years later and I'm like, okay, wow, this is like dropping me dead right now. This is incredible. That's happened a million times. And it's just taste. I don't know. Maybe it's also like circumstance. Some albums I like a lot more at the time than I do now, which is fine. Like Watch the Throne. I remember I had my wisdom teeth pulled out. And I was just like incapacitated for 2 weeks, but I bought that album on CD and the really beautiful like packaging George Condo thing, and I loved it. I just think now it's like it's solid, but damn, that was a missed opportunity. That's all I feel now. It's like could have been classic, and it wasn't. But
we're a weird bunch of rap nerds. Well, music nerds, I suppose. Generally, we like I have that as well. I listen to Fake Bonanza to this day, and I think his first verse on there is one of my favorite Yazine verses, just generally. And no one talks about that track. And so, just any time I can do it on my platform, just to big that up. And I probably don't listen to the whole album enough, and now I'm too scared to. That's another thing where you think, I don't want to ruin the precious, thoughts and things I have in my head. I don't want to ruin any of those. We're really weird.
I'm not sure if I heard it now that I'm thinking. I think the internet scared me because I wasn't downloading that much at the time, and I read all the reviews and I was like, I didn't have that much money at the time, so I was like, I'm not going to spend $20 on this CD that doesn't have a cover and that he seems to be doing to get out of his contract or whatever. And that was how I perceived it. But now that I'm thinking about it, I should go back and listen to it.
Yeah, do you know what? It didn't take out of his contract, but remember at that time, I mean, Mos was in my top three for like 10 years after Back on Both Sides. I think you have to remember, he's still at that level of rhyming. If you're not liking the beats, the rhymes alone are like, oh, okay, no, he's definitely bringing fire. Which actually is one of my favorite bars one of the hottest bars on this album is Yonder's when Yazine says, I think, it's Isbay. He says, it's a heart-trending work of staggering fun-crushing. And that should be on T-shirts. That should be on that is so mind-bending. It's a heart-trending work of staggering fun-crushing. I'm still trying to, but then you've got the Fun Crusher thing in there as well. The Fun Crusher Plus thing. And it's just a really, again, does it mean anything? I don't know, but it sounds great. And it's that, we've talked about Ghost before, SonRaw. You've been on the Patreon. We've talked about Ghost. Ghost has their moments like, that sounds amazing. But if I really try to untangle it, does it, equate to how good it sounds?
And it doesn't matter if it does. That's the point. And that's what Ghost, I know Ghost is the one that's been quoted recently as like when he talks about Supreme Clientele, he's like, it doesn't need to mean anything. The art is just in what you just said. If you said it sounded amazing, that's the whole point. It doesn't need to be deep and have this like substance to it from a, I don't know, content perspective. That's when people get a little too academic about music.
Yeah, that's weird because when Ghost said that, he was like, "It doesn't have to mean anything." I'm like, "Sure, it does. It means that like I've listened to it so much that you might not remember what you meant, but I've listened to this so much that I think I have a pretty decent idea of what you were thinking."
And Woods has actually said this because there's I don't know if he said it in response to me on Twitter, or he said it in response to someone, or he said it in an interview around Aethiopes. He was saying how like he like definitely appreciates people reading into his lyrics and stuff, but like he's like, a lot of times people are interpreting things I never meant. But he says, I think he said something along the lines of, just because I didn't mean it doesn't mean your interpretation isn't valid. And that was like, that's the key, because there's a line on No Hard Feelings off Aethiopes where he says something flipping through channels like case closed, bacon shows. And I thought he said bacon, like cop, like as in a pig. And then it was like cold cases he said before. I'm like, damn, is he like, and then the way his bacon, it was so just gross. And like, just like, again, like definitely not a statement in favor of the cops. Like it's clearly like just showing bacon shows, cold cases closed, like just showing the depravity of like surfing the channel, another person stabbed on a train. And like the cops do their bullshit, and it's like no one's saved. It just sounded so bleak. But I think what he actually said in all the lyrics says baking shows, like baking.
Shows. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what this is when I'm trying to like cooking
British
shit.
Bake Off. He's probably watching the
British
Bake Off.
And I was like so disappointed. And I was like, I thought this was the craziest verse and like the craziest line. But then I'm like, doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
My interpretation, I was like super pumped. It's like, I'll keep it.
That's art. That's art, man. Yeah. That is art.
For like 10 years before I got on the internet, I swore that like Q-Tip was saying, relax yourself, piece of clam on like, Midnight Marauders. It wasn't until the internet came up and was like, that's not what he said. It's like, I was like, I just thought that he was talking about seafood. And
You've
like,
ruined that song for me now. As a 90s.
Well, you never heard that.
No, that is, fuck yeah, Jesus. I don't know if I'm going to come back to that now. That's amazing. But this is what I mean. This is it, man. Look, I grew up on Bone Thugs and Harmony. No one knows what they're saying. No one over here, especially. So it's about the art of it. So I'm absolutely there with you. Before we wrap it up, I just want to talk quickly about thoughts on here. As a feature Black Thought on here, we can't, it'd be remiss of us not to talk about the Colossus. That is Black Thought. I thought on Frequency, do you know what? Again, bass singing on Frequency with waves all over the place or something he's saying, that is slowly becoming a rewindable moment for me where bass got that refrain. It's not long enough. Again, elongate it into the album more as a general thing. But I thought on there, I have heard some people detracting from his verse, but I thought it was great and it made the others stand up. It made the others absolutely stand up where, Talib is killing it. What's he say? Put them in camp, say it's metal enhanced. Yeah, say it's mental enhanced. They focus in concentration. That line, put them in camps, say it's mental enhanced. They focus in concentration with the camps line, all that. I think if a new rapper that Rohan had recommended me or SonRaw had recommended me had said that, I'd be on Twitter going, holy fuck, like what a line. This guy is what, but it's Talib and he's got this history and so I think sometimes it's just good to scope back and realize, man, you're 50, you've been doing this a long time. So for you to stand out with things, it's probably a little bit more uphill than someone newer. But yeah, no, I just want to shout out that track Frequency as well, generally. I don't know what you thought about Thought on this. Did you enjoy Thought's cameos, features?
I did. I don't think it should have been near the end of the album, the way that it was sequenced that way. I think that that wasn't the place for it, but it's a great verse. I mean, I'm looking forward to what he's doing with Danger Mouse. I don't know how that is going to sound just because I don't think I've heard him do a rap album in so long. But listening to this, I was just like, can we just get Black Thought rapping over Madlib for a whole album? Like, why can't, let's just cut out the middleman here and get to what we really need.
I think, I have a thought on that Danger Mouse, but I'll start by saying, yeah, I liked the feature. I disagree that it didn't fit. It didn't make sense at the end. I just think I agree, but I still agree from the standpoint. I just wish that kind of energy was in the middle part of this album because I feel like that's where the clear weakness of it is. But I like how it ends with Frequency to No Fear of Time, because I think those were the times where the beats really, I think those are the two best beats for Madlib when it came to like matching the theme. Because I just think there was more going on. There's like different movements of it. I like is that like a guitar kind of main melody? I just think there's a lot of stuff going on. It's not as flat sounding. And I think Thought sounded great. The thing about the Danger Mouse album, I think like Black Thought, he'd sound great on Madlib. Everybody would. But like he's great at these live instrumentation. Like that's been his entire bread and butter. So I imagine he'll feel pretty comfortable. I liked the first single. I didn't listen to the one that has like really questionable features. I almost maybe want to avoid it and just wait till the album comes out because that scared me a bit. But it's like, whatever, Black Thought still is a major artist and all that. Is there Russ on that song? Am I wrong?
I think Russ.
Oh, Russ is. Oh God,
I think it is Russ. That's
because Joey Badass. I'm totally down with it. He has a new album coming. I'm super interested to see how that sounds. But Russ, I'm gonna have to. I might should just wait and then get it in the context of the album before it gets sullied. But Danger Mouse is dope. He has worked with. I think if I'm not mistaken, he had some co-production. So it's not hip hop, but Michael Kiwanuka.
Oh yeah,
he had. because I think he has generally some credits with Inflow, who's worked with Lil Sims a lot.
Really?
And like I feel like that's like a good vibe for Black Dot. He's always been on this rich instrumentation live, and Danger Mouse can do his thing, but so I'm curious, and I really like that single. I think that beat was actually really great. So I'm high hopes. I have high hopes.
It's funny. I just realized this. I never bought this like out of huge fandom for him, but I actually have the singles cover to Crazy on my wall.
Oh wow!
Just because I really like the artwork and this limited print, and I was I got it. I guess 15 years ago now or whatever. Yeah. But I've just always kept it with me because it's like I just like how it looks on my wall.
Yeah, it's sick. That's wicked. That's amazing. I mean, this is it. I mean, so I'm kind of I'm looking forward to that. I am looking forward to that. I still can't believe Russ is on that. Just harking back to Russ was one of our residents, Raymond Ridge, but Chomp 2 is one of his favorite albums of last year, and the listeners were very much actually some were loving it. I'm not gonna lie, Russ has fans. He does have fans.
He is incredible.
He's like the new Talib in terms of how divisive he is. Almost.
Oh my god, maybe.
Is he? I take him like a. He's like what? He's like I'm trying to think of an artist that's kind of like him. He's almost like an NBA YoungBoy, and he's almost like a Kevin Gates or a Nipsey Hussle in the sense that I truly don't think I've met. Not Nipsey Hussle. I know a lot of people love him, and I'm not. They're not. This isn't a quality stamp like a argument, but just more like the Kevin Gates NBA YoungBoy. Just that I've never met anybody personally who likes them, but they have fans. They have fans. It's not even like divisive where it's like I just have never heard anybody even bother to say they don't like Kevin Gates. Like I heard someone in my patron chat recently say that they liked one of his mixtapes, and that's like the first time I've heard about him in like 5 years because I just don't care. But man, Russ has a huge amount of fans, and he's really smart. He's a smart dude when it comes to like managing his business as an indie artist. I think that's where his value is, but I think he's just a watered down Drake, and he has like that do it myself vibe. I think he needs some help.
I totally agree with you. And at the same time, it's like, I feel that there's like no overlap between the NBA YoungBoy fan base and the Russ fan base. They're just, they both do it, but it's completely on opposite ends.
Oh yeah, totally. There's no overlap. It's just similar from the sense of like, I don't know anybody, but they have some fans and they have a lot of them and they make tons of money, which is great for them. Yeah, I don't even know what a NBA YoungBoy song actually sounds like. I'm sure I've heard it, but I
like NBA YoungBoy.
I don't even know. Is it just trap? Is it trap music?
Yeah, you know what? It's a lot of auto tune and a lot of. I mean, to me, it was more his early mixtapes. I haven't followed up with what he's done since then. Okay, but like maybe like 2018, like when he came out, it was still fairly new, that melodic trap auto tune, and it's like a lot of emotions. And he's actually like gone through so much shit in the legal system and just being in Louisiana and coming from where he's from. Like, I think it resonates. It like the music doesn't sound like Tupac, but it resonates on that, like every man, I come from the hood level. So it's like, I do, I definitely respect it. It's not necessarily for me as a person, who's into what he's into, but like, I can see why he's really popular. Like going back to what you said about Joey Badass, it's weird. I was surprised that this album didn't have a J. Cole feature and a Joey Badass feature, because they were the two new artists I felt could have worked with Mos and Talib, but they were like, nah.
Joey Badass really, and he's on kind of that third eye wave. I don't know if, I'm curious to know where it's been 5 years since he dropped.
Yeah, 5 years. Wow.
And the album drops next week, I think. I'm seeing him in concert in a month. I'm actually excited.
Wicked.
I'm a fan. I'm not a massive fan, but I'm a fan. And I think I've watched Mr. Robot. I finished that show recently. Talking about Mos Def and Yasin like acting. Man, he was wildly impressive in that whole series. He had like quite a significant like supporting cast role for multiple seasons.
He's in Woo.
Didn't he play Method Man on the Wu-Tang show?
Deck. I think he played Deck in the Woo show.
He played Deck. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't even seen that. Oh man, just Mr. Robot
it's
for me.
Definitely worth it. But then you say them features could have worked. They. In a weird way, what's another good thing to wrap this album up quickly, there is a way like to do this as a comeback. They're not looking backwards. That's another thing that I liked, is they're not actually looking back to the 90s or the noughties of where they've made their bread and butter. They are looking forwards, just not in the features. In the features is just thought, right? And I think, yeah, it is just thought. So they're not they're not like looking backwards, but they're not like hyper new as well, putting on the new cats like you said. Mind you, they're not new anymore, but to Black Star they would be new, I suppose. So okay, thank you guys for all this amazing takes on Black Star. Were there anything like, what do you, I don't know if we expect anything after this album. I mean, do you think they'll ever drop another one? Do you think there's anything, what would you want from them, if there is anything you want from them as a group or as solo cats?
I definitely want a Yasin solo project. I think, especially if he is workshopping this stuff, then I hope this hat served a greater purpose then, because I do think if I had to rank before hearing Black Star, what I would expect to be better, it would be a Yasin solo versus a Black Star album. I would always assume the Yasin album would be amazing, and it's been so long. So I'd say I definitely want, and I would say I'd bet on him dropping an album. Not going to have any semblance of what it would sound like, but I have a feeling he will. It'll be a real solo at some point. I have more faith in that than Andre 3000. And Talib, I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like I don't necessarily make dying for him, but I was, like I said, kind of surprised by his competency on this album. He clearly still has something to say and he's still got skills. So I don't think they're going to ever release anything, and I don't want it. I honestly don't even want another Black Star album. I think maybe what's better is that they try to deliver like a final good solo album. And as for Madlib, as the third person here, just fulfill all these lib albums that you have, like the Fly Anakin one, please. Yeah. And that is sounding like it will come. The West Side Gun one have zero chance. I feel like that'll come, but maybe. And I'm sure there's like a million others that like have been talked about, and I would love to hear all of them.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be here for that as well. Absolutely. What about you, SonRaw?
Other than what Rohan just said, which I pretty much agree with through and through, I'm just going to put this out there because you never know what comes true when you put energy out in the world. Mos Def, Erykah Badu duet album. Oh. I would like to see that. They've never talked. This is just me, fantasy A&Ring, but two artists that don't really put out a whole lot and that, work together, that were part of the same circles. Yasin could sing on the whole thing and I'd still I would love it. And, yes, I mean, as far as Talib Kweli goes, I mean, I don't really know. I can't say that I checked, I was surprised when you mentioned he had a Diamond D album, a collab out.
I'm pretty sure he did. I'm pretty sure he's on.
No, that totally checks out.
I think I heard it. I think I heard it. It was like lukewarm on it, I think. Maybe, yeah.
I think maybe more so than like another Black Star album, I'd be happy to see a Black Star tour.
Yes, I would love that. Totally love that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard bad things about Yasin live now. Yeah. He's done a few lads. Okay. Yeah, especially in London. I think he's.
Well, then him shows. And Erykah Badu are like a perfect. Oh wait, no, that's not. That's Lauryn Hill. That's Lauryn Hill. Never mind, Erykah. I want to see you. I love you so much.
I have actually not. This is the perfect time to drop this story because Mos Def was actually living in Montreal about 10 years ago. We didn't know where. He was apparently couch surfing, and the story was that he had this girl on the side here and was just living incognito in the city, which is the most Yasin Bey type of scenario you can imagine. And I got really lucky because the local kind of small studenty club, because the girl was always going there, Mos Def would just end up in the basement and just backstage and hanging out like very normal. They managed to book him at a tiny club and he rocked it there. He was genuinely, but I mean, it was, the kind of club where, if you're in the front row, you were less than a foot away from him. It was super up in person. And he was great in that environment. But to what you're saying, I could totally see him being a bit of a spaz, not showing up on time, not doing any of, not being a professional on tour in a bigger setting. But if you get a chance to see him, in a more intimate club, because apparently he'll still do that if you can convince him or whatever.
Yeah.
Do see it, because it was worth it for that.
Oh, that's amazing. One of the best gigs I've ever been to, the Black on Both Sides tour. That was just incredible. But he's kind of set the standard from there. But yeah, absolutely. I don't think they'll do another one. They've got podcasts now. They're doing obviously the Miracle Mile with Chappelle. They've got that's the thing. Chappelle's very ingrained in their return, and he's not anywhere on this album, which was there wasn't even like a voiceover or a little snippet or even a reference. It was a bit kind of they seem to be very, but they always have been, I suppose, quite tight. But yeah, no, I can't see them. I think this was kind of more of a statement of, I think the politics was part of it. They talked about the politics of their music, like being ownership, like, back in the day, who's got ownership to that music. And, this being, they even have statements where this is owned by Black Star, whatever, their company and stuff like that. So maybe to lift that company they've got, maybe they do more music, maybe. But almost 100%, I don't think they'll be doing. I think they'll be doing it so they get paid, which is obviously, behind paywalls probably. But yeah, no, I'm glad, like we said, to round it off, I'm glad this album's out. I actually enjoy it. I think there are a few lackluster moments, but not enough for me to go, this is still a good, solid. I think I'll come back to what Dylan Green said. It's the fans expected more than just good enough, but I thought it was better than just good enough, personally. But there we go. Guys, thank you again. Last thing I asked them before we wrap up, I'll start with you, SonRaw. What is the last great piece of music you heard? Could be old, could be new, just the last great piece of music you heard.
I told Bessie Elucid. It dropped last Friday, and it's there's nothing, I'm gonna go for the obvious answer, and it's weird. I mean, I don't even know if I should be saying it. It's like the internet cult of Backwoods now makes me almost feel pressured if I don't like something enough, because people are like, this is the album of the year. And it's like, I don't necessarily think that yet, but I can't say that it's anything less than great also. But it's been really interesting seeing the Backwoods guys going from like call to act to like, the internet's going to put a gun to your head if you don't give this like a 5 out of 5, but they probably deserve it. It's, I can't, it's so different, and it's just not at all like a Woods album, and I'm just still processing it, but it's great. It's that's my pick basically.
Love that. People go check that out. Definitely. How about you, Rohan?
I'll quickly echo that really quick. I Told Bessie's amazing. I think to the point SonRaw just made, it's nice to see a collective of artists that have got the spotlight finally after so much hard work, and just not surprisingly, but just exceeding expectations ever since really Brass, ever since Shrines. I mean, the run has, but like when they really started to get I think this elevated status was Haram, and I guess you could put Brass in there. Every time I've listened to it, I kept thinking, man, like this might be the one where it's just not that amazing, and that's okay. Trying to almost like deal with it personally. I'm like, no, I Told Bessie was the moment Elucid was been waiting for, now that he has the higher profile, and he just probably made his best solo album, and maybe he's topping Aethiopes. Like, I don't know. Oof. It's just amazing. I will put in a separate one that I just listened to, 700 Bliss, which is a Moor Mother and DJ Haram collab album. And I had no idea this existed until like yesterday, until like the Cabbages podcast newsletter. Go check them out. I didn't even know this group existed. Obviously, I love Moor Mother. The album is really cool, noise rap, very weird. So come in with some expectations to be kind of put off. But the track Anthology, go listen to that.
Anthologies.
You'll just like, it's truly just absolute crack. It's just bananas. It doesn't make sense. It's like spiritual, but also like so danceable. Yeah. It just was like jumping up and down when I heard it. But yeah, that's mine.
Okay. I'll be honest, could not get into it. That one, that is the track I could. But the rest of it, it's not clicked enough for me. Elucid, I mean, amazing. I really like it. I love Dirty Deacon from last year. I think that was such a good It wasn't an EP, it was an album, wasn't it? That wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and that was like a re-release, from what I understand, like a
was it?
resurfacing. Yeah, am I wrong with that? Like, because that was recorded, I think, in like, I'm just making the year up. I think like 2010.
No way.
But I hadn't heard it until this year. I might be wrong that it was re-released, or maybe it was worked on but never released. But I think it's the former. I think it was released, and like it's probably even in the description of Bandcamp. I'll go check it out.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I did not know that, but I really, really enjoyed that, and I enjoy that more than Bessie at the moment. But that's just because I've had more time with the other one. But there are moments on Bessie where you're just like, what is? Yeah. Again, you're right though. There are, but they do keep delivering. And I'm sorry to drag this episode on for people who wanted to hear about Black Star, but can we just quickly talk about how they do keep? It is pretty mad how like every release is fucking great. I can't think of many other acts who are that prolific and that consistent at that bar, you know.
And the Backwoods label too, like as like the stamp, like for other artists like Premrock, who has made great music before his Backwoods debut last year, just to see the elevation from every act that get their like Backwoods album. It's pretty phenomenal, and we have one coming up still, the Akai solo one, which I already have been loving. Akai solo, I think his Navy Blue album was the best of the run of Navy Blue produced records.
Oh, really?
By a long shot. It was incredible, and I have so much faith. It's like I need to like temper it. I'm like, okay, but it's okay if they don't hit it out of the park. But I'm like, there's no way this isn't going to be good. It's like, and just actually the Von P Dirty Deacon Quick, I just checked. It was released actually for the first time last year, but it was recorded a decade ago, but remained in the vault as both artists built their solo and group careers.
Fascinating.
So it was created mainly then and just kind of only released then. Yeah.
But it sounds amazing now. Imagine if that had dropped 10 years ago. I just don't know what my mind would have gone. Do you know what I mean? I would be like, how is that? Yeah.
You know who's got, like, tying it back into Black Star, Madlib has had a series of those archival releases come out. The one that he had with Kazi a few years ago, the Black Market Seminar one.
Yeah.
Like, just, I mean, like, to me, it's like just pure mid-90s, like, Alcoholics era nostalgia. Because it's just like clearly them freestyling in a basement over Madlib beats and like, this will never come out. And then it's like, 20 years later, it's like, oh, this is gold. You guys just wouldn't have, like, no one would have appreciated this had it come out in 96 or whatever. No. But but years later, now that those styles are like impossible to replicate and they're so of the moment, it's great. And the Elucid Von P album kind of reminds me of that as well, where it's like sometimes like you have to wait for the right time for something to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. On Madlib, if people are just thinking, I want to listen to more Madlib, the Deal With Us, like, suite.
I love that.
That's my favorite. I think that volume 2, I actually got that off Discogs the other day. I couldn't believe it. Finally got it on vinyl. But that is, where you just realize how
5 and 6. 5 and 6 are my favorite beat conductors, other than the India one. The India one's still my favorite, and those two I have on vinyl. I paid as much as I needed to get those two.
Big, I love that.
Yeah, that one's a great one.
Love that.
No, that was just like, out of every tribute that anyone ever did to Dilla, that was like just mind blowing. Like, just as a conversation with him, it was like, and obviously like they knew each other, and they, like so much has come out after Dilla's passing, but to get those ones, I was like, whoa, you really, really dedicate. It's one thing to do a song; it's another thing to have like, I'm going to practice your style and incorporate it just to show people how amazing you were, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful love letter, isn't it? I love that. And what a way to end it. But like, so people here, let us know, man. Let us know. Hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on socials, let us know what you think of the Black Star album. Guys, where can we find you then before we go? SonRaw, where can we find your stuff, Rohan? Let us know as well.
The best place to at me is on Twitter at SonRaw, otherwise Linktree/SonRaw, however they write it, but it's SonRaw. That's got all my articles, my music. Just whatever I've been doing. SonRaw 5 Steez album coming very soon. As soon as we finish it, it's going to be worth the wait. I'm so proud of this thing. And thanks for having me.
Big up. Rohan.
You can find me on the podcast website, which does have some written content, although there's going to be some strategy changes made to that part soon. But rmpp.squarespace.com for the website. But the easiest way to like get direct contact is just hitting me up on Twitter at Rap Music Plug Pod. And it's the same handle for Instagram, although I'm more active on Twitter. And you can also check us out like on Patreon, just Patreon, the Rap Music Plug Podcast. You can just Google that. There's a lot of great bonus content, bonus episodes, a really great community that's growing every single day that has like truly some of the greatest heads in the community right now. It's like getting everything you'd want from recommendations for music, but just like on crack, because like on steroids, because like everybody else has they're also plugged in. So it's just like a cumulative, like beautiful, vicious cycle. So yeah,
love it. Absolutely love it. And as I said earlier, follow these guys, especially for recommendations, man. If you just want to dip your toe even into the underground, there's this stuff here. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening, to watching. Subscribe, all that stuff as well. Comment, share it, tell your mum, tell your dad, all that good stuff. And let's keep doing this. Thank you guys. Peace out.
Yeah, for sure. Peace.